Hello everyone, you're listening to You Got It with Warrior Woman 91. Alright, thank you for joining me everyone, and to everyone who tuned into the last episode of this show. I was really happy with the way it turned out, even though it was a little bit longer than I expected it would be. It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the guests. And this week I have another guest. It's he's a blogger, a vlogger, as Ben Shapiro likes to say, and an author of The Seven Royals, All Good Things. Jacob Airy, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, so I want to jump right into the news. We're going to be talking about Captain Marvel and the fact that this weekend is the 50th anniversary of Batman.
80th.
Yeah, or excuse me, 80th. Oh my gosh, this is why Jacob is here, so that I get things right. But before we talk about all the good stuff, I do want to talk about the news. There was something really funny that happened yesterday that I really, really enjoyed watching. Jacob, did you follow at all the Unplanned movie and what happened with their Twitter site yesterday?
Yes, it was really interesting. So apparently Twitter made a quote mistake, close quote, and banned them, blocked them completely from using Twitter. You would just go to, if you did the @unplanned movie, it would just be a blank page.
So basically, according to my understanding, Twitter suspended the Unplanned movie official account because it was connected with other accounts. It was basically mass reported with other accounts that were, attached to suspicious or activity that was breaking Twitter rules, and heaven forbid we break a rule of the sacred overlords from Twitter. But so they pulled down on the opening weekend. They pulled down this Twitter site for the official movie, which just kind of stinks for everybody involved in the movie. How else are you going to promote the movie other than your Facebook page on opening weekend? It's really the worst thing you can do to somebody. And so Jacob, why don't you tell the audience exactly what the fallout from this was?
Well, Twitter immediately experienced a backlash, and to my understanding, not even from conservatives. I believe even other major outlets commented on it. I believe it was Variety that broke the story. Excuse me, The Hollywood Reporter actually broke the story, and before the conservative movement even kind of got to it. And I think they kind of felt the pressure because, like you said, even if you don't like the movie, it is kind of considered taboo to block a movie's social media accounts before their opening day or of the opening day. But as a result, they actually quadrupled, I think, their Twitter following, something like that. I see you have a note here that they started out with 7,000, but they've grown to over 100K at this point, mostly thanks to this publicity.
So that's the thing that I love about this, and the whole reason why I wanted to talk about it is, as you say, they started out with just over 7,000 followers, and they now have, I just checked, and they have 104,000 followers after this whole debacle. So all those people that were maliciously reporting the Twitter handle for suspicious activity or for hate speech or breaking Twitter rules or whatever, it completely backfired on them because they ended up they just, as a gift, basically added 100,000 followers to their Twitter site. So they're actually helping promote the movie. And as you said, The Hollywood Reporter, they covered the story. So they got a nice piece in The Hollywood Reporter with this controversial story, and then they got 100,000 followers. So I guess, and they also tweeted this wonderful tweet out from the account after the fact and said, "Thank you guys for just really being supportive of the movie and giving us all these followers. We really appreciate your anti-support," or something like that. But that I think that was the most appropriate response, because I just want to thank, I haven't seen the movie yet. I do support the message of the movie, and so I do want to personally thank everybody who helped to attempt to hurt this movie and to hurt their ability to market the movie. I want to thank all those people because they really boosted the social media presence of this movie that targets Planned Parenthood. So you guys are the best. I wish you all success. Please do it again. In fact, please try to pull down my Twitter site next time. I'd like an extra 100K. And I'm sure Jacob feels the same way here.
100%.
Yes, this is my favorite thing ever. All right, so that's the little news portion of today. There's, of course, all kinds of other drama going on Twitter, but we don't need to get into that right now. I do want to start talking about movies because my guest last week and my guest this week are both really big movie buffs, and especially Jacob is the comic book guy. He is the guy that you go to if you follow him on Twitter at @RealJacobberry. He will tell you everything you need to know about comic books. You will be educated. You will have the knowledge and wisdom. It's really hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of free advice that he just willingly gives away on Twitter, and it's just it is amazing. Like, Jacob, I don't know if people realize how generous you actually are on this level, because you really should be being paid so much more money for the comic book the wisdom and knowledge of the comic books.
I couldn't agree with you more, actually.
Yeah, I figured you would enjoy that. So you and I and a couple others, we all went and saw Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of a controversial film. I talked about this with my guest last week a little bit because he also went to the movie with us. What was your...
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, that guy. What was your take on the movie? Did you feel like it deserved the controversy that kind of surrounded it from both the left and the right? Or
no, not the controversy at all. Because for me, it was a good movie, but it wasn't a great movie. A lot of people on the right kind of got butthurt over Carol Danvers being Captain Marvel. And I actually got into several arguments about this on Twitter. She has been Captain Marvel for something like 6 or 7 years in the comic books. This is not a new thing. It was done before all the diversity stuff started happening in the comic books. I mean, really, it was always kind of trickling in. But there was actually a fan demand at the time that she become Captain Marvel. I believe they did the storyline where Janice Marvel, who's the original Captain Marvel, he passed away due to cancer, and the plot was actually supposed to raise cancer awareness. And then so after he passed away, then she stepped up. And so I really feel like a lot of the controversy was a little unfounded. Like I said, I thought it was a good movie, not a great movie. I still think of this current phase of Marvel films, and we talked about this before we started recording, is I felt like it's Doctor Strange. I don't feel like it beat Doctor Strange. I think that but on the scale between Winter Soldier and Thor Dark World, it was definitely leaning to that Captain America Winter Soldier side.
Yeah, I really, I agree with you, and I agree with our guest from last week in that it wasn't like solid gold. Mm-hmm. But I enjoyed the movie for two reasons. One, it was just I was able to shut my brain off and enjoy a movie, which is largely why I go to see a movie. And the second thing was honestly the 90s references.
Yes, that was great.
That was definitely feeding to the audience, or at least my demographic who grew up in the 90s. And so I died over those references. So it was a movie that it hit some of those right notes of, there was the nostalgia, there was some nice humor, and it wasn't what I felt like was like anti-men or mm-hmm. man-hating. There was a little heavy-handedness with like certain songs that were played in the background, or just like, she's a woman, and the kind of hippie discussions that you hear. But I didn't come out of the movie offended by anything, or
right.
I don't know.
Definitely not like James Cameron's Avatar. Yeah. That one wasn't so much feminist as it was anti-American. Mm-hmm. And if you were paying attention, you walked out of that movie offended. And I didn't feel like it was that way with Captain Marvel.
Yeah, Captain Marvel, I felt some of my criticisms largely have to do with the execution of the character by Brie Larson, because I did feel like she wasn't very relatable. She was always angry. And I do have to make a correction, because my sister contacted me immediately upon listening to last week's episode and informed me that I had been in error in saying that Captain Marvel was actually a fun character in the comics. She said she used to be, but in more recent comics, she has been the more stiff kind of unfriendly character. And so I did want to give a shout out to my sister. I'm correcting it. This is on the record. I have corrected it, and I take it all back from last week of what I said. Now, what I had meant to say last week was in Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the TV show, Carol Danvers is kind of more of a fun person. Like, there's a scene where she's, and I'm sure Jacob has seen this episode because Jacob is the expert.
Probably 3 times.
Yeah, there's an episode where she actually goes out with the other Avengers and they have pizza, and the waitress is actually Black Widow. Sorry, I just spoiled the whole thing. But anyway, and she is out having fun, and she's like in her civilian clothes and stuff like that with all the other Avengers. And so that, I guess that's more of what I was looking for in the movie. Jacob, would you say that, or I guess what was your evaluation?
My problem with is I agree with your sister. When they first introduced Carol Danvers, she was kind of that fun-loving kind of character, and they maintain that in the animated features, even in the current Avengers Assemble, or I think it's called Black Panther's Quest right now. They've maintained that, but after the second Marvel Civil War, that's when her character became more serious. Her first appearance in, I believe it was The Avenging Spider-Man, as Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel, that was her first. I think it was Avenging Spider-Man number 9. She was more fun-loving. Her and Spider-Man even kind of... people don't realize this, but in the comics, her and Spider-Man are actually the same age. Everyone kind of... Because of Tom Holland, everyone thinks of Spider-Man as being super young. But in the comic books, he's actually in his 30s, his early 30s. There's various retcons, obviously, because he'd really be, in his 50s at this point. But anyway, so yeah, I kind of saw that. My problem was she could not deliver a joke. She was completely humorous. All her humor fell flat. Thank goodness they had Samuel L. Jackson there, because if it was anyone else, maybe Clark Gregg. If they had given Clark Gregg more of a role in it and he had been there, maybe it would have been better. But just really, Samuel L. Jackson made the movie more fun and made the jokes funny.
That actually did surprise me that they didn't have Clark Gregg in it more, because he was kind of plugged as being in it more than he was.
Yes.
And
well, in the trailer, he's actually in 3 different sequences in the first trailer.
Yeah.
But then I noticed in the second trailer, he's not in. Like, he's supposed to be in the alien surgery in one of the trailers. You can barely see him, but he's there. Mm-hmm. But I noticed he's not like that in the second trailer or in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I felt like he had been pushed more. And then when I saw the movie, I was like, he was literally in it for like 5 minutes. Right. And so I'm sorry, I'm spoiling this for everyone, but you guys, if you're listening to these shows, you just really need to understand that people are going to spoil things for you. So don't listen to the shows if you haven't seen the movie.
And another note on that was a lot of commentators on the right were saying, "Oh, it's anti-white male," and I guess, like you said, there was some of that, but Clark Gregg's character was portrayed really well, mm-hmm. and even though his role was smaller in the movie, I really feel like he provided that counterbalance, because even Fury makes a comment that he's one of the good guys. Mm-hmm. So, I want to throw that out there as well.
Yeah, I guess this is the thing that irritates me about these movies when they talk about race and they talk about, oh, there's too many white guys, or there's too many this guy, or there's too many guys that look like this. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I can't, like, Samuel L. Jackson, I don't see his race. I see whether I find him entertaining or not. And I also see the nostalgia that I have for him going all the way back to Jurassic Park. Access denied, or whatever that line is, or hold on to your butts, or like the rest of it. Like, Samuel L. Jackson is a classic actor. I don't see, like, I never was attracted to his acting or the characters that he played because he was black. Like, that was a characteristic of him that it's there, and I really could not care less, because it's not relevant to his character. It's just I love his acting style and his personality, and I think he's really funny. So I guess all that is to say is, I don't care. That's the long and short of it, people. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what your gender is. I just care about the character, whether it entertains me and whether it makes sense.
And also, too, like, this was kind of my problem with some of the people on the right as well. And I'll try to criticize the left too, but the right kind of behaved a little bizarrely to me because they were saying, okay, we're going to boycott. There were actually calls to boycott Captain Marvel and go see Alita Battle Angel. And I was kind of like, well, I'm sure I haven't seen Alita Battle Angel yet, so I'm sure it's good. But I'm kind of like, wait, so you're going to fight sexism by saying we don't like Brie Larson because of, and she did make some atrocious statements, and I'll sure we'll talk about that later, but on the marketing campaign, but then to say, so we're going to go support this other woman, this other female-driven superhero film. To me, that is actually kind of condescending, and you're only proving their point. And that's my humble take on that.
So this is something that comes up with me talking with my brother, who's a little bit younger, and one of the things that he has brought up is that because of characters like Rey from Star Wars and Rose also from Star Wars, he's very hung up on Star Wars right now, but because of female characters like that and their poor portrayal and their the lack of character and the lack of interesting story and the real lack of purpose in the movies, he doesn't like to see female leads anymore. Anytime, and he said this to me, he says every time he sees another female lead, he gets upset or nervous, and not because he doesn't like female leads, because there's been plenty of movies that, like, he loved the Hunger Games. He loved the Hunger Games.
Alien, Ripley from Aliens.
Yeah, he loves all that. Like, he's not against female leads, but anytime he sees one, he gets frustrated and upset because he's afraid, okay, I'm going to have to watch another movie that they're just going to throw it to somebody who is going to be she can do no wrong, she has no character flaws kind of character, she's boring, or they throw in a love interest where there doesn't need to be one or something like that, which is just kind of shallow, I think. But yeah. I guess what would you say to somebody who feels that way and feels like, I can't watch female leads anymore, I can't, like, this whole concept of a strong female character is just nonsense?
I would say go to the classics. So like I mentioned Alien. There's just because someone else is making a Mary Sue. This is my new buzzword. I've been saying Mary Sue a lot lately.
So is my sister.
Well, and that's what Rey is in The Last Jedi. Not so much in The Force Awakens, but I would compare Rey to Jyn Erso from Rogue One. Jyn Erso's character, she's not a Mary Sue. She earned every skill she has, and she does it without perfection. She does it with the skills that she has, and it's believable. I recently watched a film called Close with Noomi Rapace. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. And it's one of those, she is an ex-soldier who is now a bodyguard, and she's protecting this preppy, self-entitled girl who's the daughter of an oil magnate. And there's a lot of martial arts fight sequences, but I was telling my wife, they weren't unbelievable. So she fights this guy who's obviously bigger than her, but she doesn't just take him on fist for fist. She uses things in the room. So there's a table in the room, so she grabs a table leg and hits him. She grabs a knife and stabs him. And so it gave it an air of reality to it. And so I think that that's what we need to look for, is support films that do that, like Close, and go back to the classics like Alien or Aliens, and because there are really good, strong female protagonists out there.
I did want to bring up a really good example of a female lead. Jacob knows I'm a big fan of the TV show Jag that went off the air over 10 years ago now. And one of the highlights of Jag was that they did not have just a guy as the main military guy, but they had two leads. They had the guy, and they had the girl played by Kathleen Bell. She was a Marine major when she started, and I think she ended up a colonel or something towards the end. But there's an episode in season 9 where she has to fight a terrorist, and she obviously, even being a Marine, she can't physically fight this guy. But she's been kidnapped. She's been taken into this room. She's alone with this terrorist. And she has to fight her way out, but she can't use physical force to a certain extent because the guy is going to overpower her eventually, despite all of her training. So I'm not going to spoil the episode. Obviously, she survives because it's a TV show and she had to come back the next episode. But she uses other ways to manipulate the guy. And it's such a well-written episode and it's so well-crafted. And she's not just like this woman who's thrown in there to be the love interest. She actually is a well-thought-out, complicated character who has problems in her backstory. She has, a struggle with alcoholism, and she has like real-world issues. And so I guess that's more of the kind of character that I like to see. I don't want to see, she grew up and she never had any problems, and she never had emotional issues, and she never cried, and she's just always this doe-eyed idiot that can do no wrong and whatever. She had a bunch of problems and she overcame them, and I guess that's more of what I'm interested in seeing. So I don't know, Jacob, is there an example of what you would prefer to see if you were looking for like a female lead in a show? I
am about to offend every single Trekkie and Trekker out there.
Everybody brace yourselves, it's coming!
Captain Janeway from Star Trek Voyager.
Whoa!
My mom is a huge Star Trek fan, and so we were introduced to Star Trek very early on. I was born during the Captain Picard years. Me and a fellow author, he recently disagreed with me about some comments I made about positive comments about The Next Generation. But back to Captain Janeway. She is the captain of the starship Voyager. For those of you unfamiliar with the show, it's about a Starfleet vessel. It's actually a spinoff of Deep Space Nine. So Deep Space Nine was a spinoff of The Next Generation, and then Deep Space Nine spun off Voyager. I actually don't think it was an official spinoff, but they were just connected kind of spiritually, quote, quote. But the ship gets flung into deep space, 70 years away from Earth, even at high warp. And they're trying to make their way back to Earth. And their captain is a woman. But it was really great because they didn't throw it in your face. I mean, they did a couple of female power empowerment stuff, but it was more hippie stuff. She was vulnerable at times. She made bad decisions and had to make up for them at times. There's this really great episode where the crew gets lost in this area of space where there's no stars. So they can't see anything and nothing but radiation. And it shows her, she isolates herself from her crew. She pins herself down and she is feeling really guilty because now, before they're always running from threats, so she doesn't really have time to think about being guilty. But now they're alone in this empty part of space, and she's feeling guilty about what happened to the crew. And it's her story arc is very compelling, very interesting. They kind of had some breakdowns in the last season of the show, but all in all, I would point to her. So. Feel free to at me, at Real Jacob Berry. Don't send your hate mail to Kelly. I don't think Kelly shares this opinion. But that's actually why I like Star Trek Voyager, is even though it was a little bit more PC than The Next Generation, it still created a good female protagonist.
I actually haven't seen much of Voyager, so after hearing this, I kind of want to go watch this episode. I'm sure it's...
They're all on Netflix.
Okay, I might need to watch some Voyager on Netflix after this. But... yeah, I guess where we do agree is that there needs to be a little more of an element of realism in these female characters because, for heaven's sakes, there is no woman on Earth that hasn't cried. Yeah. There is no woman on Earth that hasn't had an emotional meltdown. I'm just...
and I'm part of the new man because there's some of these old school conservatives that say... I shouldn't say conservatives, they're right-wing. They say, well, a woman can't do any of that. And that's not true. A woman can do it with her own strengths. Yeah. So, a woman can't be the captain of a starship vessel. Why not? She can use her female strengths, the things that are in her skill set to be a leader. And I think that part of it is kind of preposterous.
I think, and that's, again, where we agree with my example in my show, the female lead, she can't physically overpower this terrorist that she's been locked in a room with, but she can use other ways, and she also can attempt to fight back physically, but knowing she's not going to succeed like that. That's kind of why I find it fascinating. Okay, I can't, realizing she can't get out of it in this way, she's got to actually think about, okay, what other ways, what other manipulations can I add to this situation for me to get out of here without getting myself killed or raped or whatever. So I think that's where we actually agree.
Yeah, that's true.
Sprinkle a little, some of that salt of realism into your female characters there, please. And I think my brother would appreciate that too, because he's never met a woman who hasn't blown up at him either. All right, so now Jacob's most important part, Batman 80, not 50, 80. The 80th anniversary of Batman is this weekend. I have a couple of questions for Jacob, but I want to open up the floor a little bit for Jacob to explain to the audience why he likes Batman and why it's very important to him.
Well, one of the things is whenever I was growing up, I was a pastor's kid, and my parents were very strict about what I could and couldn't watch. So Saturday morning cartoons, even those were kind of restricted, even not too much. But Batman was...
You weren't allowed to watch Pokemon, were you?
I was not allowed to watch Pokemon, but I actually did watch an episode over at a friend's house, and it did not interest me, so I didn't feel like I was missing anything. It was also on at the same time as Spider-Man, so Spider-Man, Pokemon, I went with Spider-Man.
You had your priorities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, but Batman, the animated series, I started watching... it started in 93, so I was 5 when I first started watching it, and it brought this incredible realism, because even the Spider-Man, the animated series of the 90s, it's a fantastic show, but they tried to, because of censorship laws for Saturday morning cartoons, they had to take out some of the realism and some of the violence. Batman the Animated Series was not like that. It was very realistic. There's even an episode where they don't show it on screen, but Commissioner Gordon gets shot and there's a chance he could die. And it's called I Am the Night, and it's a very emotional episode, especially when you're 5. And it was just a fantastic show. It ran for 4 seasons, and that's what got me into Batman. And I started reading comic books, particularly of the Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil era. So kind of the Silver Age, post-Batman, post The Dark Knight Returns era. Fascinating stories. Batman is a really interesting case study, and I really feel that Batman has kind of transcended the comic books. He's been in so much media. He's been in novels. He's been in plays. I think there's a Batman the Musical. And yeah, I know, it's ridiculous. He's been campy. He's been cheesy. He's been serious. He's been dour. And so I really feel like Batman has kind of become one of the American mythologies. And of course, we have the West and other comic book heroes. But I think that's what makes Batman special is anyone can be the Batman, and you can put your own face behind the mask, because who hasn't experienced tragedy and whatnot, and also every one of his villains kind of represents a different part of your psyche. You've got the Joker with the one bad day, and he cracks, right? And then you've got the Riddler who does the mental manipulations. You've got the Mad Hatter who hypnotizes you into doing something you don't want to do, and so on. And so Poison Ivy, the big seductress, Catwoman, the unrequited love, and apparently Who Leaves You at the Altar, and other stuff like that. So that's kind of my take on why I love the Batman so much. It's just from beginning to end, Bob Kane and Bill Finger, they really created and crafted a well done character who has just proven his place throughout history, as far as from 1939 to now 2019. 80 years.
There you go. So I'm not really a big comic book reader, mostly just because I'm not really comfortable reading comic books. I'm more of the no pictures kind of a reader, and that's probably just because I kind of grew up on pictureless books. But for somebody like me that maybe would like to start getting into reading comics and maybe more of the Batman comics, can you just fire off 10 of your top?
Oh yeah.
This is an easy question. This is a
well, actually, it is in the sense that I always have a list, but it's also hard because it's like, man, it's hard to go down to 10.
This is Jake Tapper to Hillary Clinton softball level question here.
It's true. So I would start off with his what became his official origin, which is Batman Year One. It kind of combines Batman's pulp history, and it fleshes out the origin. The only problem with it is Commissioner Gordon, or in this story, Sergeant Gordon. No, actually, I think he's lieutenant. He has a little bit more of a role because but it shows Batman's early days, his very first year. There's no crazies in it. It's just him dealing with the mafia and dealing with the police chasing him. So I would recommend that. There's a tie-in to it called Scarecrow Year 1 and Two-Face Year 1, which explores his first interaction with those characters. That's really good. If you want an alternative, if you want a more modern origin, there's Batman Earth 1, Volume 1 and 2 by Jeff Johns. Amazing artwork, and it's Batman in the 21st century, because Batman Year 1 was written in the 80s, so it has kind of a retro vibe, but this is more of a modern origin. It's not canon, but it's still good if you're just kind of like, well, I want to see how Batman got started, but I don't really want to go with the 80s. That's a good one. Next up, Batman The Long Halloween, which is how the Arkham inmates take over crime in Gotham. It's a very fascinating, very compelling tale. It also tells how Harvey Dent became Two-Face. Incredible story. Right after that, so that's 3. So number 4, Batman Dark Victory, which is I don't think it's canon anymore, but it was the original canonical origin of Dick Grayson and how he became Robin. Up next, Neil Gaiman, who I actually don't really care for Neil Gaiman. I know that's heresy for a comic book fan to say, but Neil Gaiman's Batman, Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader, it's Batman as a ghost at his own funeral, and it's really interesting because he has heroes that are his friends. Alfred comes, and some of his villains, and they each tell a story about how Batman died, and they're all different. And so it's really interesting because it just dives into how Batman is a legend. A Cold War era story, number 5, Batman 10 Nights of the Beast, where Batman, it has a shocking ending, I'm going to tell you, but it's about a rogue KGB agent called the Beast. He comes to Gotham City and starts eliminating people who are supportive of Ronald Reagan's Star Wars program, not the movie, the actual defense system. And it's really interesting. It's very pro-American. And like I said, it kind of has a shocking ending to it. I would highly recommend it because it's kind of one of the first times Batman faces... KG Beast is the name of the character, and he's kind of the pre-Bane of the Batman comics. Let's see, that's 6, right?
I've lost count.
I think that's 6. So I'm gonna try to cycle through the next ones, but I'd also recommend Batman Court of the Owls, which is a Scott Snyder era storyline. It's really good. Batman faces off this secret cult that has infiltrated Gotham City. It's really good. It's really interesting, and it ends with I won't say how it ends, but it's an epic showdown between the Owls and the Batman family. Number 8, I'm going to have to go with The Dark Knight Returns. It's a little brutal. It's very violent, and the artwork is a little weird, but again, it's Frank Miller. It brings Batman, because Batman had just come off the 70s, which was an awful decade for Batman. DC actually considered canceling Detective Comics, but this one, The Dark Knight Returns, really saved Batman from obscurity and brought him out. Number 9, I'm going to go with Batman Endgame, which is the Joker gets bored with Batman, and he just decides, I'm just going to, since I'm bored with Batman, I'm just going to go and do whatever I want to. And so it leads to more chaos. And this is, number 10 is actually a more recent one. It just came out last year, but it's called The War of Jokes and Riddles. And it's about the Riddler and the Joker have an Arkham Civil War. And villains start to choose sides on if they're going to work with the Riddler or the Joker. So and one of the cool things about this series is it brings some of the 70s cheesy villains into the modern era because they just needed a ton of villains for it. And it has this really great showdown between Deathstroke and Deadshot, two famous assassins. Of course, Deathstroke from those of you who are fans of Arrow, and then Deadshot if you saw the Suicide Squad with Will Smith. So it's a really great. That's a really great showdown with Batman, and it actually forces Batman to make compromises he wouldn't normally create because of the civilian casualties that start piling up. So yeah, there's my list of 10 right there.
There you go. I gotta give a shout out to my sister. I hope you, when you hear this episode, that you take notes and that you come back to Jacob with a full report. And anybody who wants to come back and tell Jacob that he's right on his top 10 or that they think that he's crazy on his top 10, please tweet him at RealJacobAiry on Twitter and let him know if he's crazy or if he knows exactly what he's talking about. And he will be happy to debate you and to tell you why you're wrong.
1,000%.
Yes. So I did want to bring up the animated series because I have a lot of favorite episodes, but still my favorite episode, and I can never remember what it's called, but it's the one where Joker ends up getting on a plane to drop a bomb on the city, and Harley finds him.
Oh, Harley Quinn.
Yeah. So she finds him and realizes that he was going to leave without her. And there's this wonderful showdown between Harley and the Joker that I really enjoy, and it ends up getting really dark. So I would really recommend that everybody watch that episode because that is my favorite Batman episode. It's also just really, really funny because the humor is very absurd to the point of it's hilarious. But Jacob, do you have a favorite animated episode?
Oh yeah, but without a doubt, it's Almost Got Him. I actually, in preparation, I watched it last night to remind myself why it's my favorite episode. And I actually, and I use this as an excuse to watch other of my favorite episodes just to say, oh yeah, it's definitely still my favorite. But
I better test it by watching 10 more just to be sure.
Exactly.
It's kind of like eating too many cookies. I think I like this batch, but let me eat a couple more to make sure.
Yeah, exactly. But it's got to be, without a doubt, Almost Got Him, where it's Killer Croc, the Penguin, the Joker, Poison Ivy, and Two-Face. And they're all playing poker at some seedy dive bar. And they each tell a story about how they almost killed Batman.
Yeah.
And it's and they're trying to decide who gets the closest. And it's a great episode. It's really well written. Throughout its history, Batman the Animated Series it won several awards. And I always feel like that episode in particular, to this day I feel this way even as an adult, I feel like that episode was cheated out of awards. It should have won at least Best Writings. It's one of the most well-crafted, well-adapted Batman stories.
Yeah, I just think the animated series for Batman really is the best of all comic book related cartoon series, even better than the X-Men series, which I think is also one of the top shows. My top 4 of the cartoons would be Batman, X-Men, Justice League, and Earth's Mightiest Heroes in that order.
Mine would be, I would put X-Men as number 5 and put in Spider-Man but all the others are the same.
Yeah, maybe I need to go back and rewatch the Spider-Man ones. But I think the Batman one, like if there could be a space between all of the other cartoon series and Batman, because it is just that good of writing, and because it's really more of an adult show than you realize, because it does get really dark for a kids show, and I really appreciate that they were bold enough to go there in a kids show. Fox,
a lot of people don't realize this because Warner Brothers owns DC Comics, but Batman the Animated Series originally aired on Fox Kids because they had some weird agreement with Fox. But after season 3, they took like a year break, and then they came back on Kids WB, and that was the new Batman Adventures, where Batman had the dark black costume as opposed to the Denny O'Neil yellow bat symbol.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. How they got around the censors of that day, I don't know, but they did.
Yeah, somehow. I mean, yeah, I could go on and on about Batman the Animated Series, but it's a really well-made show. Everybody should go back and watch it, even as an adult. There's
actually a funny story about this. So I follow a lot of nerd outlets on Twitter, and I actually unfollowed one because they wrote an article why Young Justice is better than Batman the Animated Series, and all the reasons were bullcrap. And I was like, I'm unfollowing you. This is just for clicks to make people mad. The person's reasons didn't really make sense. I guess they had one good point about the artwork is better. Okay, yeah, it was Batman the Animated Series is 93, so and the Young Justice Outsiders is 2018, so yeah, duh, the artwork is better.
So I do want to talk. I'm hoping that we can bring Jacob back for another episode because we got Infinity War, but Avengers Endgame coming up.
Part of the journey is the end.
I know. I'm so excited for that movie. It's going to be great. But I will have to bring Jacob back on for another episode, hopefully after we've both seen the movie and we can discuss it. And hopefully that episode can be with a video. We'll do a video podcast for that episode so you guys can see our ridiculous looking faces and how happy we are and how devastated we are after Endgame because of what they're going to do. They're going to rip our hearts out and then shove them back in and hope we survive. We'll see what happens. But one thing I've carried over from the old show is I'm still shouting people out from Twitter. And I just really want to shout out the Unplanned movie. It's at Unplanned Movie on Twitter. Give them a follow because whether you agree with the movie or not, the whole situation with them on Twitter I think is really, really funny. So just go give them a follow since they kind of got messed with on whether they should have access to their Twitter site on opening weekend. Come on, you guys, you're so foolish. But that's my shout out for this week. Jacob, do you have anybody you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out Hollywood and Toto. Going back to the Unplanned thing, he had a really good take on the culture war that happened around Unplanned, not just them, quote, accidentally, close quote, being banned on Twitter, but other things surrounding the movie, like channels refusing to run their ads and stuff like that. And it's a really good article, so head over to HollywoodandToto.com and follow him on Twitter at HollywoodandToto.
And Jacob, where can people find your work and where can people buy your book?
You can buy my book pretty much anywhere. It's anywhere online. It's Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Kobo.com for the ebook, and BookLocker.com if you want ebook or paperback copy. You can find my movie reviews and more nerd conversations at my blog, jacobberry.blog. And of course, I'm on YouTube. YouTube channel is Studio Jake, and you can just put youtube.com/c/Studio Jake to find me.
All right. Thank you for joining me, Jacob. I'm excited to have you on my new show. And thank you to everybody who is listening to the show. We've had a couple of really solid episodes. Hopefully we'll have a couple more for you coming up. And I will look forward to doing another episode shortly. So stay tuned.